Welcome to the All About You podcast. My name is Sheila and I am your host. In this podcast, I invite people to tell their stories of their travels, hobbies, and passions. These podcasts are also now available on my All About You YouTube channel. So if you have a story to tell, please contact me on allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com and let's tell your story. Welcome back to the All About You podcast, and we're continuing our travels with Pier, and we're now off to Russia. So Pier, welcome.
Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, this is the 8th country, and so from a tropical area, Venezuela, to Sakhalin, where it was cold.
A bit of a change in clothing and climate then.
Yes. Well, it was good because we got a big bag full of Arctic clothing. Underwear, shoes, boots, you name it, everything was in it.
So you were all given this big collection of clothing, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yuzhno is, by the way, the capital of Sakhalin. It is the far most eastern part in Russia. Very interesting island. And I knew it already because I made previous business trips when I was in London to see the progress in Sakhalin on the construction. So during one of the business trips, I already secured a house in Sakhalin Energy residential area, which was built on a hill and in the south part of the city, Yuzhno, not far away from the main airport on the island. The houses in the residential area were all prefab houses, imported from Canada. They were built for Arctic areas, so it was a 3-level house. And the bottom part, the base, and the first level had entrance doors. So when there was a lot of snow, and we had it a few times, we could use the entrance door on the first floor to get in and out.
That is just incredible.
I have photographs that it was so high that from the first level we took the snow shovel and then we had to go around and try to take the snow away from the entrance door at the base level.
Wow, and snow clearing is hard work.
Yeah,
it's hard work.
Okay, that was the house. The houses were fully furnished, including all the necessities. There was everything in it, bed, mattress, you name it, plate, cups, everything was supplied. So from day one, available to occupy. Sakhalin Island lies on an active earthquake zone, so almost every day you felt the tremors.
Oh my God, they were just that frequent.
Okay, you get used to it. And the houses are built for it, the offices were built for that, so... And our installations, what we had to design and construct, were also built for that. Most northern construction site, which was about 800 kilometers north of Yuzhno, was all built on concrete piles, special systems to more or less cater for the earthquakes, for the tremors. You know that Sakhalin Island has a length of 1,000 kilometers, so it is larger than the UK. It is a big island. Laying in the northern Pacific Ocean, north of the Japanese island Hokkaido. The history of that island, in the past there were many wars between the Soviet Union at that time and Japan. The island Hokkaido is just close to Sakhalin Island. And many times it changed ownership. There was a peace agreement in 1905 and the northern part of the island was allocated to the Russians and the southern part to the Japanese. The Russians used their part to populate it with convicts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because that was the time revolution, so they had a lot of so-called convicts. Mm-hmm. They put there 20,000 people on that island. And the Japanese they used their southern part of Sakhalin to put their 30,000 Koreans on the island to work in the coal mines. So it was a mix of
two groups of distinct people.
Yes. And at the end of the World War II, the Soviet Union regained control of the entire island. And the Japanese population eventually was repatriated in 1949. So then it was the Soviet Union. Yeah, the nature of the island is magnificent. It has everything. It has mountains, valleys, forests, creeks, wild rivers, and bears. A lot of bears. The residential area was fenced, mostly to keep the bears out. But hiking in the hills and rivers was beautiful. And it was only allowed if you had followed a course on bear management. If a bear is in your neighborhood, you can manage it. So that means you had pepper spray with you. You had to be on outside the wind. So
right, okay.
Yeah, so you had to slowly move outside the wind.
Right, so the bear's picking up the scent.
Yes, and when the bear is watching you, you have to stand still.
I mean, I guess that makes sense, really. If there were going to be so many bears around, if it's going to save your life, it's worth doing the course, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, the company didn't allow you to go away. You had to have this course, yeah. And mobile phone.
Oh, right, okay, just in case. So they looked after their people.
Yeah. But it was cold. The coldest period is from November to May, and the average is minus 20 degrees centigrade.
I have no idea what that must be like.
Well, when it is sunny, once a month you have a good snowstorm, and then it is cold because the humidity is high. But once the sun is out with a clear blue sky, it is beautiful. And I can remember sitting on the terrace in the house, outside on the terrace, in a t-shirt with the temperature, with the sun. Not in the shade, but in the sun. It was okay. And in the shade we had our things which had to be cooled because you didn't need a fridge. There was a fridge, but in a freezer. But for a cold beer, you had your beer outside.
Sit in the warm sunshine, but drink your cold beer. Absolutely.
Yeah. In that period, only you have 4 to 5 months of the year, a period that it is above the 0 degrees. In the night it was always freezing, but during the day, in that period, above the 0 degrees. Yeah, so you had to dress all the time very well. There was a railroad from the south to the north covering 800 kilometers. And that railroad was built by the Japanese. But the Japanese used a narrow gauge. That means that the width of the wheels was narrower than the European and the Russian. The Russian had another gauge, Europeans have another gauge, but it was typical Japanese, so a narrow gauge, and I come back on that. Yeah, the new project where I was working for was in the utmost northern part of Sakhalin. So you can imagine how many times I had to use that train. Now the train ride was from 6 o'clock in the evening until the next morning at 8 o'clock. It was a long ride. And each wagon had a guard, a female guard, a really Russian lady who was in charge for the kettle to make tea and for the toilet, to keep the toilet clean. But when she went asleep, the toilet was closed.
Oh my God,
So you had to know that. You
had to time things quite carefully to avoid having the problem of a locked toilet.
Yes. Oh, I have to tell you a little bit about the project because that was immense. I've never worked for such a big project. In the end, it costed $37 billion. It was huge. And it was offshore, so we had to construct 3 offshore platforms, or 2 offshore platforms, and we had to remodify an existing platform, a processing facility in the north, 2 pipelines of each 800 kilometers long, one for gas and one for oil. And those 2 pipelines had to cross 120 rivers and creeks. So imagine what a project it was, because each river crossing needed their valving system and their
and everyone would have been different because of the landscape and the length.
Yeah. And they were buried, so yeah. And then in the south there was the LNG plant. LNG just is short for liquefied natural gas. So the gas is coming in the south, and in that processing plant it is transformed into liquid. And why in the south? Because in the north everything is frozen. So the ships were more or less taking on the LNG, the liquefied natural gas, could not come in the north.
Yeah, because it's too cold.
Too cold, and the ocean was frozen.
Yeah, impossible.
Yeah. Only the southern part of Sakhalin was open, not ice-free, but open. And then in Arctic terms you have 30, 70, 50, 50% ice, water, and those big LNG containers could come in the port on a 50% ice water substance. That means that the ice was not completely closed.
But you've got 2 problems there. You've got the frozen sea for the tankers, and then you've got actually the liquid gas is actually going to freeze. So you've got 2 huge problems there.
Yeah, but the liquid gas was made to freeze.
Yeah.
That's why it becomes liquid.
Yeah.
And I can remember that I was, in wintertime, I was walking on the ocean, and it is amazing how those people fish. They drill a hole.
Oh yeah, they drill the circle, don't they? Yeah.
But
Ice
that
fishing.
ice is meters thick.
Yeah.
In their van, they come with the truck or van on the ice, and there they have a kind of small drill. They screw another part of drill on it. When the drill goes down, okay, now they have to stop another piece of drill on it, and go on and on. And in the end, they reach the open water underneath. Then they are fishing, and they go for miles and miles away on the ice. Incredible.
And I bet the quality of the fish is just phenomenal.
Yeah,
in the icy waters.
This Arctic water,
Yeah.
cold, and the fish has a lot of the nutrition of those fish is very nice. But what also was the case, the whales in the northern part of Sakhalin, the whales came there to more or less have their babies.
Yeah.
We had to be very careful on environmental issues. We have to relay the pipeline there from the offshore to the coast. Well, it was hard work, and most of the time it was 6 days per week. However, rest period and work period by the company was very generous. You had 2 times per year you had an annual vacation, so you could go back to your base country. In my case it was Aruba. And on top of that you had 2 times in the year a short vacation in the area. So that was Japan or Singapore, Hong Kong or Bangkok, wherever you wanted to go. So that was quite generous. And then on top of that, because snow was not a Western where you could get everything. So one person in the family, normally the wives, they were allowed to go once a month to Korea to do the shopping. Apart from those holidays and leaves and whatever, it was a 6 days per week work. I liked the small trips to Bangkok, to Japan, the northern island of Japan, Hokkaido. Very interesting, yeah. And of course, for the work I had to make many business trips to Moscow, because for all the regulatory and authority issues, we had to go to Moscow to purchase, for example, fire brigade equipment or emergency system equipment or trucks or cars. And we also had to install our facilities with Russian equipment. So the heat exchangers, the vessels, had to be made in Russia. And there is just a catalog, like you get a catalog from IKEA.
I was going to say you're shopping, yeah.
Like shopping, IKEA. Okay, I need this vessel, I need this.
But a lot more expensive than IKEA, I should imagine.
Yeah, so many trips to Moscow. Well, a trip to Moscow was 10 hours from Sakhalin to Moscow. So you had to sit there with the authorities. And what we had to do, we had to also follow technical courses. Because the Russians said, you are coming from the Western area, you don't know our technology, so you have to get acquainted with the pressures, temperatures, whatever. So we had to do courses, and I still got my diploma in red with my name on it, that I'm aware of the Russian techniques.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, so most of the ingredients for the project were purchased outside Sakhalin Island or on the mainland or in Russia or even further away in Budapest. I can remember in Budapest our accommodation was made for the northern facility. There was an accommodation of 300 people. And in Budapest was prefab. Everything was prefab. Yeah, we had everything. So it was not only the accommodation, it was the restaurants, it was the fitness center, it was the saunas, it was everything. And it was transported, it was made such a way that the prefab pieces were not taller or bigger or wider than a train wagon.
Very clever.
Because all the bits and pieces were transported from Budapest all up the way through Russia to the Far East side, and that was in Vanino. And from there was a ferry where the train wagons, with rails in the ferry, where the train wagons could enter. And the ferry was going to the other side, to Sakhalin Island in Komsk. And there in Komsk, they had to take away the undercarriage and swap it for the narrow gauge railway in Sakhalin Island.
Right, because it had a different size.
To the north. So there was an immense project. First fabrication, prefab in Budapest, then the railway, and then ferry, and then changing the undercarriages to accommodate the railway to the north. That was interesting. What was the case on Sakhalin Island and with the Russians? I don't want to say that every Russian is an alcoholic, but Shell had a strict policy of no alcoholic consumption during working hours. And how do you tell a Russian? Because, okay, in general, a Russian in his inner pocket has a stainless steel flask.
Okay, a hip flask, full of vodka. Okay,
yeah.
To keep him warm.
So there we are, Shell, no alcohol. And how do you stop all those Russians? So I have in my collection the steel container. They all have a sign with Lenin on it, because the people in the army, they get it for nothing, and almost every man in Russia goes in the army.
Oh yes, they do conscription, yeah.
And then they are allowed to keep the flask.
Ah, wow.
So I got one.
Oh, so you've got one?
Yeah, in my collection. In the end, I became a kind of called climate expert. How I don't know, but okay, I did. I went to Newfoundland in Canada, in the north, the west coast, north in Canada, because there they had a big simulation laboratorium on how to play and construct and design structures in ice and water. And I did many other things on cold climate, how to work in cold climates, and you name it. So I got this stamp on my forehead called climate expert.
And now you're living in sunny Valencia. That's going to becoming really useful.
Well, it is cold climate
well,
now.
Yeah, cold climate now.
Well,
not minus 20.
Okay, so down on a certain moment, Shell needed a person in the USA because there were projects coming up in Alaska. So, yeah, I was transferred to Houston, and that was in February 2006. One thing what I have to tell about the airport in Houston, because it is so cold there and a lot of ice and snow, how do you keep that runway alive for the planes? How do you keep it clean? Well, the Russians were very clever. A big truck, and out the back of that truck, they made a spindle with a big airplane turbine on it. And it was running on kerosene. So whenever they had to clean the runway, because an aircraft was coming, they put this truck on the runway, and with a mechanism they could turn this turbine from the right to the left and left to the right.
Yes, like a giant hairdryer.
Yes. And it made an enormous noise, and we were living in the residential area of Sakhalin Energy, but that was not far away from the airport, maybe 10 kilometers. But in the night, because most of the planes arrived in the night when they came from Moscow, because it is a 10-hour flight.
Yeah.
And then when you were asleep, you heard this noise of this turbine.
And they're de-icing the runway because there's a plane coming in.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yes.
So now you're off to the US, eh?
Yes.
Leaving all your technical cold climate equipment and firmly got a hand on your little stainless steel hip flask full of vodka.
Yes.
And we're off to the States. Okay. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe on whatever platform you are using. It is free, and if you would like to tell your story, please contact me on allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com and let's tell your story.